a devastation to many in the Boulder community.
A growing sense of loss.
You might not have known those people directly, but you have a connection through somebody.
A growing sense of outrage.
There's no motive that's a valid motive. This is an act of pure, unmitigated evil.
2 days after a shooting killed 10 people in Boulder, we're learning new details about the full, incredible lives these Coloradans lived.
One of the kindest people you'd ever meet. She was jovial, good-hearted, good-natured, beloved by everyone.
The hurt prompting calls for change.
We are being called to act now.
I'm not asking anybody here to show the courage that Officer Talley showed. Just asking us to show an ounce of their courage.
Tonight, one thing is clear. Coloradans are stepping up to support each other through this.
I see a community coming together for everybody.
Tonight, our state is grieving the loss of 10 of our neighbors, their lives cut short in a flash by a still unexplained act of violence.
And these people were not victims. They are not names on a list. They lived full, rich lives in this beautiful state we call home. And we want you to know their stories.
Well, good evening and welcome to Denver7 News at 10. I'm Shannon Ogden.
And I'm Ann Trujillo. And at this point, shock really has given way to mourning for so many of us. Tonight, the Flagstaff Star is lit over Boulder, a sign of hope and solidarity as the city tries to come to terms with this loss.
And all across the city, people are gathering tonight, finding ways to support each other through this dark moment.
Denver7 Sloan Dickey is live in Boulder tonight. And Sloan, you attended one of the vigils.
Yeah, that vigil took place right here at the Boulder County Courthouse, and there's still some remnants, some flowers and candles that were left behind. This is just one of numerous vigils that took place across the city of Boulder tonight, allowing people space to grieve.
It's just incredibly sad and overwhelmed.
Trudy Cleese has been through this before.
2 years ago, almost exactly, we were in Christchurch, New Zealand, the day after the massacre there. And we went down to the vigils. And all we had to say to people was, we're from Colorado, we understand.
Amazing grace. Now on the other side of the world, it's hitting home.
And now I have those people emailing and texting me.
Hundreds gathered outside the Boulder County Courthouse to mourn.
It's just wonderful that the community does turns out for each other.
How many roads must a man walk down?
Finding little gestures to heal and rebuild what was lost.
You might not have known those people directly, but you have a connection through somebody, through a friend or somebody else.
And a moment of silence to reflect and remember the 10 lives lost. A handful of vigils took place across Boulder Wednesday night, in churches, at community gathering places, in parks.
The more people that are here together, it really just helps everybody realize that we're not trying to deal with this by ourselves.
Boulder has never experienced violence like this before.
I'm not quite sure how we're all going to come back from this, but we will.
But across the city,
we're resilient. We'll make it past this. We're Boulder strong.
It's the people and community who are finding ways to rebuild.
Boulder strong, that's a phrase that's gained traction over the past few days as people try to make sense of this loss. And one speaker here tonight said it's through community gatherings like this where that strength can be found. Reporting live in Boulder, Sloan Dickey, Denver7.
Sloan, thank you. And we honored the wishes of Neven Stanisic's family by not showing his picture until tonight. His family just sent us this new photo of the 23-year-old. Neven was at the store to service a machine at the Starbucks, and we spoke with his family's priest, who described Neven as respectful and hardworking. His family came to Colorado from the former Yugoslavia to get away from the war-torn country. Neven Stanisic, who went to Alameda High School, was the second youngest of the victims.
And tonight, for the first time, we're also hearing from the family of Judy Waters. Now, a lot of people knew Judy through her love of design and clothing. She had stores in Boulder and Denver. And tonight, her family released a statement writing, "It's been comforting and heartwarming to hear the impact that our mom had on so many people throughout her life, but it's not surprising. She was extremely compassionate, humble, empathetic, and a truly selfless person." And State Rep Judy AMABILE says she shopped for herself and her kids at Judy Waters' store on Pearl Street back in the 90s. She says she was always struck by how much joy Judy cared about all the people around her.
You went there once and she asked you your name, and then she always remembered your name. And she knew your kids, she knew how old they were, she knew what kind of stuff you liked. She just was really a genuine person who knew how to connect with everybody.
And family members say Jody loved to hike and boulder with her 2 rescue dogs. She dedicated her life to her family, and her grandson Everett called the light of her life. And all of us, including our elected leaders tonight, are struggling to come to terms with the loss of 10 of our neighbors.
Denver7 CB Cotton is live in Boulder tonight. And CB, amid the grief, you found leaders really are out there trying to search for solutions.
And Shannon, that's right. A lot of the conversations this evening were centered around healing, but certainly there's a tone from our elected leaders that they want to prevent this kind of tragedy from ever happening again. Now, first and foremost, state and U.S. representatives say they grieve with us. And during a special conversation tonight, a lot of policy ideas were discussed. Democratic U.S. Senator Michael Bennet said he's going to be advocating for tougher background checks and limits on gun magazine sizes. He also used some strong words to say he feels mass shootings are becoming far too common.
I am very ashamed of us, the political leadership in Washington, D.C., that her entire generation has grown up in the shadow of gun violence with the reasonable fear that they could be killed at their school, or killed at their synagogue, or killed at their church or a movie theater. And I can see it in their eyes every time something like this happens, or in the calls that I get from them. My generation of Americans didn't have to grow up in that with that level of fear.
Now, Boulder City councilors also called a special meeting tonight, which included a moment to honor each of the 10 victims. This was followed by community leaders calling for action and then remarks of remembrance, which included one from a teacher who knew the youngest victim, Denny Song.
My friend and colleague called me Tuesday morning to tell me the news. Denny was one of the names. She told me exactly what I was terrified to hear. Everything after that was a blur. The emotions were too big. Since names were announced, we've heard witnesses speak to Denny's heroic efforts. There's not a doubt in my mind that these accounts are true. Denny died a hero. Thank you for saying his name. Thank you for remembering him as the hero he was.
And during all of these conversations, there was a lot of talk about mental health and what Boulder will do to provide resources for residents in this community in the days to come. Boulder Mayor Sam Weaver says they'll be using the city's social media channels to push out this information again in the coming days. Reporting live in Boulder tonight, I'm CB Cotton, Denver7.
Thank you for that, CB. And people in Boulder came out today to honor the sacrifice of Officer Eric Talley. He was the first to respond, rushing into the grocery store to face that shooter. Hundreds lined the road to watch a procession in his honor. A lot of people say his heroic actions prevented an even greater loss of life.
When he went into that King Soopers, he saved so many lives. When he was engaged in that gun battle, so many people ran out.
He was there, and we're convinced he saved a lot of people's lives.
Officer Talley leaves behind 7 children, 7 to 20 years old.
Special Olympics Colorado also paid tribute to Officer Talley today, writing, Officer Eric Talley was a valued member of our law enforcement torch run efforts. Officer Talley participated in multiple torch runs and was a long-standing supporter of inclusion in his career and in life. The organization also shared some details about 51-year-old Terry Liker, one of the King Soopers workers who died in the shooting. And the organization said Terry Liker was a member of the intellectual and developmental disabilities community, a former Special Olympics Colorado athlete, CU Buff supporter, and an employee with King Soopers. Terry brought life and light to all she did.
And today we spoke to the family and friends of a woman who was really the face of the festival community in Boulder. Lana Barkowiak founded a high-profile clothing and art store called Umba. Maybe you know it, just off Boulder's Pearl Street Mall. And today the memorial outside that store is a sign of just how loved she was. She was also well known for her booths at festivals all over the world. Lana's brother told the New York Times she'd just gotten engaged. Her friends tell us she was a shining light to all who knew her.
Lana was one of the kindest people you'd ever meet. She was jovial, good-hearted, good-natured, beloved by everyone. Definitely a kind being, and it's really a loss I'm sure all the people that have lost their lives have their own story, but Lana is someone who will really be missed in the community.
And more stories tonight. We're learning a lot more about 61-year-old Kevin Mahoney. His family shared these new photos with us today. His daughter says Kevin retired in his 50s, and he spent some of his time making deliveries for Meals on Wheels in Boulder. In fact, he walked his daughter down the aisle last summer, and his first grandchild will be born this summer. His daughter says he is a hero.
Suzanne Fountain worked as a financial counselor, but might be best known as an actress. She loved music and theater and performed with the Denver Center for Performing Arts Theater Company. And today, the Actors Equity Association offered its condolences, writing, Suzanne Fountain, who died Monday, was a talented actor and a cherished co-worker and friend of many Equity members. Equity members across the country extend their sympathy and support to our colleagues in Colorado as we renew our call to Congress for sensible gun control legislation.
And the man accused of this mass murder is expected to make his first court appearance tomorrow morning on 10 charges of first-degree murder.
I'm terrified of going back in there.
They weren't physically hurt, but the trauma isn't over.
Just thinking about all those 3 people who will just be gone now.
Grocery store staff unable to go back to work and shaken by the prospect.
Now Coloradans are coming through for them in a major way.
I don't think that there's enough words that I can say to express the gratitude that I have.
It's been one of the snowiest marches on record, and there are more flakes in the forecast.